The potential for world building that video games have as a medium is something that's always been amazing to me. In a book or a show, when world building is done well, it's easier to become invested in the narrative because you're able to immerse yourself into the setting of the plot, but there's this extra layer of freedom and control when it comes to the world of a video game. Because sure, you'll probably see a lot of different interesting aspects of the world when you follow the main story, but you're also allowed to roam around and freely interact and do things that have an impact on the world and yourself, like killing a chicken because you thought it'd be funny and then realizing that now the entire town wants you dead. So a while back I got this comment on my Xenoblade 2 video from someone named Alaria, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and they made a lot of good points, but there's one thing in particular they said that I want to bring up here, which is that in Western open world games there is very little reason to freely explore because side quests are marked out for you and doing optional stuff doesn't really give you anything worth your time. A little bit of paraphrasing there. While I don't necessarily agree that only Western games have this problem, it is something I've kind of noticed is becoming a trend with a lot of AAA titles where the open world is essentially just a giant checklist of shit for you to do and you don't actually have to discover anything for yourself or do anything very meaningful as far as exploration goes because the game already tells you everything you need to know. So in this video on youtube.com/einstro.com, I want to talk about a few of my personal favorite features I've seen in open world games and the different methods I've seen games use to make their worlds feel more alive, and I encourage players to proactively explore and run around more freely instead of just fucking using a GPS all the time.
Go straight. Go straight. I said go straight, you fucking dumbass, what the fuck?
The two main examples I originally brought up in my video were Skyrim and Pokemon, because instead of marking out everything important and telling the player exactly who or what to care about, these two games find ways to encourage the player to pay attention to and interact with their surroundings by showing them why they should care. Skyrim has a ton of scripted events and dialogues that play to provide hints on how to start certain quests. In Windhelm, there's a boy by the name of Aventus, Aretino, that you need to find before you can initiate one of the major quest lines in the game. And although there are a couple of ways you can get this quest which are less specific, like asking an innkeeper about rumors, there's a special conversation that plays right outside his house where this lady and this kid are talking about him and how he's trying to summon the Dark Brotherhood in his home. Even though the game still points you to where his house is after you accept the quest, you'd only be able to see this marker if you bothered to ask an innkeeper first or overheard this particular conversation, which feels a lot more natural and dynamic than if you had just walked into Windhelm and there was already a marker without you having to do anything. Among other things, this kind of design is what makes Skyrim's world feel like it's worth your time to really dig into because you're rewarded for being observant and proactive. Likewise, in Pokemon games, you don't have to talk to most NPCs because a lot of them just say some dumb shit that you probably don't care about, but there's usually one or two of them near the beginning of the games that'll give you something useful like a potion, which teaches you like, hey, not everybody's fucking useless, but if you want free shit, you're gonna have to talk to everyone and see if they give you anything. And it's not even just with people, too. I have a compulsive urge to check every single trash can I see in a video game, and it is solely the fault of Pokemon. I really hope this game is good, by the way. In both these games, you're encouraged to proactively look for people or things that might be useful, and this also allows you to be more immersed in the world since you're way more likely to talk to everyone and care about the characters around you. Because how many times have you played an RPG, talked to the first few people you saw, and then just completely stopped after you realize that the game just tells you who has and doesn't have a quest for you? Another great example of showing instead of telling is this really obscure game that you definitely didn't expect me to talk about in this video called Breath of the Wild. The beginning of the game teaches you to use high ground and towers to find shrines, and apart from a few main objectives, the game rarely ever tells you where to go. You have to physically see and mark out everything you want to explore on your own, and as you continue playing, you eventually come across things like fairy fountains and Korok seeds, both of which do extremely useful things, so you're incentivized to pay more attention to everything around you so you don't miss anything. Hollow Knight doesn't tell you anything in terms of where you're supposed to go. You have a map, you have 2 feet, and that's all you get. But in the process of exploring and figuring out where the next area is, you'll likely come across places that are seemingly inaccessible, and your gamer brain will probably tell you,
well, hold it right there, partner. I don't think we can go there yet.
And as you progress, you'll unlock a bunch of abilities and movement options, which are basically the game's way of subtly telling you that, psst, hey, remember that place from earlier? You can go there now. But the areas aren't specifically marked out for you. You have to actually keep track of the world yourself and remember the locations of places you couldn't access before. There's no GPS or waypoint because you are the GPS. And not only can this make you feel super cool for figuring out where you need to go all by yourself, it also makes discovering optional stuff a lot more satisfying, which is what I'm going to talk more about right when the chapter transitions. Any second now? Okay, it's going to happen. It's right now. Any second. Apart from making it interesting to explore the world, allowing players to discover content on their own is a very powerful thing, because besides the actual item or reward the game gives you, there's this sense of achievement you might get where you feel like you managed to do or find something that maybe not everyone who played the game was able to. Take the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild for example. Yeah, the seeds have an actual useful purpose in the form of upgrading your inventory, but the reason why finding one is so satisfying is because nobody told you to move this rock to fill in this circle. You decided to do that all on your own, and the game gave you something nice for noticing this extremely minor thing. Dark Souls isn't even really an open world game, but there are a bunch of unique NPCs and weapons you can find if you bother to look around, and even though the weapons and the spells the NPCs sell are good and fun to use, part of the reason it feels special to have these things is because they're also proof that you put in the effort to actually explore the map fully and find them. Discoveries can also make for great and memorable gameplay moments. I think every Skyrim player would know what Meridia's beacon is, but for the people who don't, I'll explain it. Meridia's beacon is essentially an item that randomly spawns in chests around the world, and the player needs to pick it up in order to begin the quest to obtain Meridia's Daedric artifact, which is the Dawnbreaker. But upon picking the beacon up, this happens.
A new hand touches the beacon.
I think almost everyone will remember picking this seemingly insignificant item up and then immediately shitting their pants. Fallout and Elder Scrolls games also have this system where almost nothing is marked out on your map until you physically visit or hear about a place, but when you're out exploring and you're close to somewhere you haven't been to before, you can see an icon on your compass and go towards it if you want. And I actually like this because discovering places feels more spontaneous than if you already had a waypoint set on a marker on the map and were just going towards it. And even though after a while you kind of understand what each icon means and roughly know what to expect, the game throws you curveballs and you might discover a location with a special quest or item. There's a place called Sheerpoint which is very inconspicuously marked with the icon for a word wall where you normally just fight a dragon and learn a new word of power. So an unsuspecting player would probably beat the dragon up like usual and go like, "Hey guys, I'm in Sheerpoint just hanging out," and surprise, there is a dragon priest, and he's actually kinda hard to kill, but if you manage to win, you get his mask, which is a unique item that you can only get at this location. And I just wish I saw this kind of design more in other games. I'm perfectly aware that a lot of open world games purposely have ambiguous markers on the map to hide what's there, but clearing a bunch of outposts full of enemies is a lot less interesting to me in an open world game when I pretty much know exactly what to expect from every single one. Basically, finding stuff on your own feels great, and it still feels good when you get something for going out of your way to visit a certain part of the map, but if you combine that with the satisfaction of discovering something on your own, or if the game can find a way to defy your expectations, I think that's even better. Another thing I really like seeing in video game worlds is interactivity, where your actions feel like they actually impact the world around you, and likewise the current state of the world also has an effect on you. Yakuza 0 and Kiwami's sub-stories aren't marked out on the map for you and instead trigger cutscenes when you walk past their locations, which are usually funny and interesting stuff that grab your interest. And it feels like the world is more alive because the people in Kamurocho are actually initiating interactions with you instead of it always just being a one-way thing where it's like, okay, this guy needs me to do something, let me go talk to him, and now this guy needs something, let's see what it is. What's that? Why do I keep mentioning Yakuza in my videos? I mean, I don't know, I don't even really like Yakuza that much. Dude, imagine thinking I like Yakuza. Ha! Ha ha! Ha! There's the obvious example of Breath of the Wild again, which is probably the definition of interactivity. Weather like thunderstorms and rain and an area's temperature affects Link in different ways, and you have to keep these things in mind while you're out exploring if you want to survive. And I don't even think I need to mention how many ways there are for you to interact with the world and do cool Zelda boy things. This is a bit out of left field, but Final Fantasy XIV has quest lines for beast tribes which show you the progress of the area that's being developed in the story, and once you build these places, they're there forever. You can run around in them and take pictures and shit, unless they get destroyed in like a later expansion. I hope that doesn't happen. But you get to see your actions actually affect the game's world, which is really cool. All this doesn't directly encourage the player to explore more, but it does wonders in the field of immersing the player into that world, which I think is a good motivator for exploration and doing optional content in general. At the end of the day, all the stuff I've mentioned is what I personally like seeing, and I also get that there still always has to be some level of hand-holding so that the player doesn't end up missing out on too much stuff. I mean, if I was a developer, I'd want people to see everything I worked my ass off to make too. That shit's fucking hard. And even my favorite game, Breath of the Wild, isn't completely exempt from this because it also has a shrine radar thing that makes noise whenever you're near one, but I'd also love to see games try out interesting and innovative ways to guide players around the map without just explicitly telling them where to go, like the golden birds in Ghost of Tsushima that actually lead you to places that you haven't been to before. This isn't to say that all games should have amazingly hyper-realistic worlds. A lot of RPGs have very simple world design and their maps are kind of just used to connect different cities and areas together, which is perfectly fine. These games are still really fun. I just love to see more games try more creative ways to make their worlds more interesting to run around in because it's just what I find the most fun in. Hey, so as usual, thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. And if you enjoyed the video, you know, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, thank you so much for 500 subs. I got a couple of small things I'd like to update everybody on, so, well, I guess I hope people see this. I want to continue making these types of video essays, but it's also kind of hard for me to consistently come up with interesting topics to talk about, so I'm probably gonna start occasionally uploading short gameplay videos like the old stream highlights I used to make just to fill in the gaps between the higher effort content, so I guess you can watch those if you want. This isn't gonna affect the frequency of like the long form videos I've been making. I was planning to kind of take it easier with those anyway because I feel like I do a much better job when I'm more passionate about the topic I'm talking about. Not to say I force myself to make any of my videos, but I do think that some are a lot better than the others. I'll let you guess which ones those are. Also, this is kind of not that important, but I changed my Twitter handle to actually be Einstro instead of fucking Atomic Core 9. But yeah, thanks again for watching, and until we see each other again.